Man, I don't know if there's anyone who has lit up the Fierce Cage the way that this guy has. It is so great to have him back. We haven't talked to him in about a year. He will be back in the Fierce Cage on August 16th, live from the Maverick Center. It is none other than the former Fierce FC double amateur champion, Nasir Davis. Nasir, great to talk to you, my man. How you been?
Great to talk to you, man. Thanks for having me. This is I remember the last man, it's been too long since the last one. I remember the last one. I just feel like so much has happened since the last time we talked, and it's just great to be back.
So the last one, giving a little bit of context, it was right before the Michael Eastwood fight at the Maverick Center. And since then, I mean, obviously the Brendan Myers knockout was emphatic, but you have gone on an absolute tear. And we've spoken personally, and I'm just so impressed with all the things that you've been able to do. And can't wait to see that you're back on this card. When Zach mentioned how big of a card this Maverick Center show was going to be, I was like, well, you got to get Nasir Davis on it. He said, absolutely. He is high on the priority list. So I kind of want to start there, actually, Nasir, because your last handful of fights, you had one at Tough Enough, but outside of that, a lot of them have been in Utah, Idaho, under the Fierce FC banner. That all being said, do you feel like you've gained and accrued kind of a Utah fandom? Because I feel like you're one of Utah's own. Not saying that you're not one of Vegas's, but so many people know you and are a fan of you.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's been like just the way everything. I just have to thank God for being a part of Fierce. Um, I definitely feel like I have like a fan base in Utah, and I definitely at this point feel like I'm representing Fierce in Utah a little bit more than I am Vegas at this point, because every single time like I've tried to fight in Vegas recently that hasn't panned out because I love for it to be an easy travel for friends and family, but every time I get a date that's in Utah and I'm like, man, I get to go drive out with my boys to Utah. I'm just like, man, I really would not want to fight anywhere else.
Haven't seen you in a little bit of time. Have you been specifically waiting for a date? Has what kind of has been the holdup? Because we haven't seen you since November of last year.
Yeah, so I would say I've been trying to get a fight booked since January of this year. I've been trying to fight. Zach's been looking like I would pretty much say that since January, I've been reaching out to promotions, local promotions in Vegas, trying to get a fight in Vegas so I could, have all my friends and family there. I've been trying to do that, but that hasn't panned out. And I beforehand I let Zach know that I was trying to fight in Vegas, but once I let him know that it wasn't happening in Vegas, Zach got right on it, and he's able to, he got me a couple matchups that fell through for earlier dates, but eventually we landed on this, and I couldn't be more excited.
I think I'd be bearing the lead if I didn't start at least the beginning portion of this podcast without talking about training alongside Merab Dwabishvili. I know you've gone on other podcasts, had some great conversations as well, but what was that like being able to train with one of the best pound for pound fighters in the entire world?
Man, first off, he's definitely the bantamweight goat. So it like, I pretty much knew that before his last fight, but after this, there's no denying it. It's not just that he beats people, it's that he beats them dominantly. There's no question that he wins. He doesn't, get close decisions. It's always dominant, and he just got a finish in his last one. So I would say it's been amazing to get to see the journey Marab's been on when he first came to the gym before he was a champion to now becoming the bantamweight GOAT. It's always a pleasure to be able to train with somebody who, is just at such a high level. So I'm grateful to be where I am to the point where I can just easily access the bantamweight GOAT, which is my division, and it kind of gives me a little bit of a reference point on where I need to be, which is a long ways to, be able to get that belt.
That's so interesting to talk about. Obviously, you being at Syndicate, so many high level guys. When Marab steps into that room, how quickly was it that you two kind of were able to start training alongside each other? I'm assuming it was because you were probably the closest thing to Sean O'Malley for this specific camp, but how long have you kind of known him and been able to be in the room with him?
Well, I would say I didn't really start like really training, like sparring one-on-one and stuff with him like right away. I would say when he came to the gym, it was probably right along the times that I had my first amateur MMA fight. So I was probably like 1-0 as an AMI, but around the time he came to the gym, and I don't, being a 1-0 AMI, I'm not gonna get priority when it comes to training with somebody at that level. But really the first time I started training with him was when the Peter Yan fight. I remember he asked me to spar him, and after sparring him, he goes, "Brother, you fight like my opponent," and I'm like, oh, "Okay, sick." So after that, we kind of, I think he kind of recognized I kind of had like a knack for imitating people, because I kind of, I guess at the time he felt like I gave him a good look for Peter Yan, and then obviously he destroyed Peter Yan. So I would say after the Peter Yan fight, that's when I started sparring him a little bit more.
You know, Nasir, it's so interesting with you. I feel like we've seen you kind of blossom into the fighter that you are. Obviously, when you fought Brendan Myers in October of 2023, you fast forward to now, I feel like so many more people know who you are. You have built a presence. You've kind of built even a little bit of a personality online, I feel like. Is there any calculation to all of this and a reason or a rhyme for why you've decided to do it this way?
No, so I've definitely, I consider my past self who fought Brandon Myers. I consider that guy an absolute baby. I don't consider, I consider that's like my son right there. He's like, that's like a kid to me now. But in terms of like the social media stuff, and I feel like I've just kind of blossomed a little bit, and in the past, I was always pretty secluded to myself until, you really got to know me. But, just seeing how people are, benefiting from social media and kind of having their own following and stuff, that kind of led me to become a little bit more, like a little bit more open. You know, ever since I was a kid, people always told me that, when the cameras are on and when the lights are on, I kind of just like, that's when I kind of like my personality comes out. And so when I started just putting a camera in front of my face, I kind of realized like, oh, dang, I'm really my most alive and my most happy when all the eyes are on me.
Do you think that corresponds with the reason that you've been able to rattle off so many consecutive wins?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've definitely had, big shifts in my life. Um, I consider myself a completely different fighter. So, from the Brendan Myers win to this win is two different Nasir Davises.
When do you think that shift started to happen?
I would say probably, um, I would say probably around like the Michael Eastwood fight, I felt like I started to kind of find my stride. And in the training room, I just noticed that I was doing things I never really thought I would do in terms of like, just how good I was in sparring, and not just in like striking, but in grappling as well. So I would say around that time, I kind of realized that, I really could do this at the highest level. And I think that just gave me a lot of confidence.
One of the things that you've been doing in recent months is also, and I love this, is seeing that you're starting to interview people and starting to build that side of it too. How do you enjoy that? Getting to have a conversation with fighters. You obviously talked about having a camera in your faces when you feel most yourself. How's that all been for you and kind of adjusting to that?
Man, it's literally, man, other than fighting, probably like the best decision I've made in my life. Because it just opens up so many doors for me. Like, I really don't put too much pressure on myself. I'm pretty much doing it for fun. But like doing what you're doing, like being a commentator and interviewing people, I never realized that that is something that I'm super passionate about and I just enjoy so much. So, it's really like just my favorite thing that I've done like in the last 6 months. And it really just, I don't know, it just kind of made me realize that there's a lot more to life than just, being in the cage.
Obviously, you have so many other things going on top of your training, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we were just talking about it with your setup. You're now starting to stream as well as game. I also know, are you some sort of a dancer? Are you part of like a group, or how does this all work?
Yeah, so at the end of last year, I broke my hand in the Jackson to Gray fight. I broke my hand and I broke my nose. And then for about 2 months I couldn't do anything. And then I was like, you know what? Shout out to Jackson the Great for this, because I for the rest of my life I'll always be like the reason I got back into dancing is because of Jackson the Great. That's how tough he is. And he turned me into a dancer. But I was like, wait a minute. I used to dance when I was a younger kid. Maybe I should hit up some classes and just do something to stay active while I can't train. So I started dancing at this local place that's like 5 minutes away from my gym. I just started doing classes once a week there. Shout out to my dance teacher Derek. He's like my opinion the best hip hop dancer in Las Vegas, and he does classes um every week at this place that I was going to. So I just did it as something to stay active. And then I realized like I was like, wait a minute, this is going to directly translate to fighting because it's going to get my rhythm and my footwork down. So I was like, man, I have to show up to these classes at least once a week. So that's what happened.
That is absolutely incredible. I wanted to talk about that Jackson DeGray fight because we haven't been able to really chat, that much since that fight last year. Fight of the year, legitimately, I think the greatest fight I've ever seen with my own two eyes live. By far the greatest fight I've ever had the opportunity to call. And I just need to apologize really quickly to you because I was doing the post fight interviews that night in Price, Utah, and I could literally see blood populating in your mouth and your nose was broken. And I felt so bad because I was like, I got to wrap this up because this poor guy can barely talk. He just went through a crazy war. So,
Yeah.
first of all, I want to apologize to you for that, number one. But two, how much did you learn in that fight versus Jackson DeGray? Because that was an all out war.
So first, I want to say, I appreciate the apology and I understand it. I'm sure if I was in your position, I'd feel the same way. But I would not have wanted you to do anything other than interview me because I laugh about that all the time. I'm like, dang, I am out of it. I get entertainment anytime I watch this. I'm just like, so I'm very happy that happened. And in the moment, I was like, where's my? I was like, I was disappointed because I thought I wasn't gonna get an interview. So you really don't have too much to feel bad about, but I'm sure if I were you, I'd probably feel the same way. Like, oh dang, this kid should not be talking right now.
I remember calling my wife right after and I felt so bad about it. But,
Yeah.
anyways,
No, but I don't know. People make fun of like Joe Rogan and stuff for doing it, but like I don't know. To me, it's different when somebody gets knocked out. If somebody gets knocked out unconscious, they probably shouldn't be doing an interview. But I don't know. It shows how fucked up I was. Um, but anyways, so yeah, what I learned, first off is just the pacing. That fight was at elevation. In the first two rounds, I came at him hard, really hard. I was really trying to go for the knockout. I wanted a second round knockout. I actually didn't even really want to finish him in the first round. I told myself I was going to knock him out in the second round. But what I learned is that, you can be doing super well. You can be, up on the scorecards. Everything can be going perfectly. But if you don't, mind your P's and Q's and you don't look at the overall situation, the fact that, there's 5 rounds, things can go very badly. So the way I see it, that fight for the belt is, my opinion, this isn't like something that I plan on fighting for belts on the regional scene and stuff, but the way I see it, that fight with Jackson the Great prepared me for any 25-minute fight I'll have in the rest of my life. I don't really see it as like just a 15-minute fight. I see that fight versus me and Jackson as a full 25-minute, UFC title fight. So I already feel like I have one of those, and that's just because of how brutal it was. He busted me up, I busted him up. I learned how I can rely on my grappling to get the job done when things aren't going my way on the feet. So I would say the biggest thing when it comes to that fight is I feel like that fight gave me the feel of what it's like to really fight 25 minutes at the highest level.
it was such an incredible fight. I remember telling Joel Haro the entire time, I can't believe we're watching this. This is just some of the most sensational striking exchanges and grappling exchanges I
Yeah,
had ever seen in my entire life. I wanted to talk to you about your grappling actually, because early on, I remember most people saying, at least through the grapevine, that you were primarily a striker. And then when you had that matchup with Michael Eastwood, anytime that he did try to engage in the grappling, you were able to mitigate it through your sprawling and all of that ability. How much have you had to lend your attention to your grappling over the past couple of years to catch it up to the striking that you already have?
definitely. So I've always trained grappling. I always understood that I was probably like more naturally a striker than I was a grappler. But I did have a fight versus a dude named Tracy Love, and in that fight I lost the decision because he was able to hold me in certain positions, and just kind of win a decision based off of position. So after that, I started going really hard in the grappling, and I really I really haven't shown I haven't shown 80% of what I'm capable of when it comes to grappling. That's because I don't know, I just haven't wanted to. But in the Jackson Gray fight, I did have to those get some takedowns going there. But when I say that, I'm 1000% confident that any person I go against, I can take them down and submit them. Um, I 100% believe that. I don't see any fighters out there that I look at and go, nah, I couldn't take that dude down and submit him.
No, it's super interesting. I know you just recently also did a jujitsu tournament. Are you trying to get more jujitsu reps just in general?
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't get a fight, so that jiu-jitsu tournament, it was actually really fun. I told myself I was like, I don't care if I lose, I don't care if I get submitted. I'm just gonna do a bunch of crazy stuff. So I was just trying flying triangles, like um, just trying to go for crazy stuff, trying to just get like submissions when when my opponent shot it and stuff.
You mentioned a name that I did want to ask you about, and that's Tracy Love. I feel like there's been a lot of talk and chattering online between the two of you. I don't follow him, but I know that you've been making a lot of videos and things about that. Do you just want that one back? Is that just your competitive nature getting at you?
Yeah, I'm really happy you asked me about this actually. So, I mean, I'm not gonna go. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but what I will say is that since after I fought Tracy Love, leading up to the fight versus Tracy Love, I really didn't know anything about him. I didn't have anything to say about him. Um, he was just, it was just like another fight. I respected him and his skills. But after the Tracy Love fight, I had constantly heard people around me, people in Vegas telling me that Tracy Love was, talking about me, talking trash about me, talking trash about my teammates. And just basically everybody who I've met, is like, man, I don't like Tracy Love. That dude's like, he's like, it's just not somebody a lot of people who I've been around were a fan of. So I've just constantly heard about the trash talk. And I was like, all right, well, I'll fight him. Then, last year, at the beginning of last year, I was trying to get a fight with him. And then there's just a lot of stuff. A lot of people said, oh, he accepted the fight. Oh, he didn't accept the fight. Just I was very confused. I was like, well, I accepted the fight. So I don't know if he's down, then I'll fight him. Then that didn't happen. And then just he was supposed to fight my teammate Zane this year. Um, and he talked bad about my teammate Zane. So there's just a lot of build up to it. And then when I heard he was going pro, I was like, you know what, I'll fight you. Um, probably the only person that I've really had any trouble with. And like when it comes to all my other opponents, I've always never had anything bad to say about them or anything. But when it came to the Tracy Love thing, it just a lot of just maybe like almost 2 years of just constantly hearing people talk about how Tracy Love is talking bad about me and how he's talking bad about my teammates and stuff. So that's all it was. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are. If you have something to say about me, and I'm not gonna try to make too much of a fuss about it, but we can always duke it out and settle it that way. But it got even crazier when he fought Jackson Gray on short notice. My teammate Zane was supposed to fight him. And then boom, Zane got sick in the hospital. I was super excited for Zane to get that win versus Tracy Love and get the belt off of him. But then Jackson Gray, obviously, I'm not super surprised that he did that. He's a savage on 6 hours notice, not even days notice when he was working or whatever, took the fight versus Tracy Love. And obviously, my opinion was that, I think it makes sense that Tracy Love won the fight, but I don't, kind of the same thing with my fight. I don't really think he won. I think that he was able to hold Jackson Gray's back for about 2 minutes in the second round, and then other than that, he lost the rest of the fight. But that's just my opinion.
You guys fought a handful of years ago, and we've seen you develop and become such a well rounded fighter. How do you see that fight going down if it were to happen in a couple of months?
I see myself knocking him out within the first minute. Um, I know he's going to shoot on me. The level of striking I have now, is not even comparable to the first time I fought him. Um, I from the minute the bell rings, if me and him were to fight, I would just be in his space the entire time trying to take his head off. He would try to shoot on me. I would stuff his takedown, and then I would knock him out, or I would submit him.
What has lent Nasir to all these upgrades in your arsenal? Because you have gotten better substantially every time we've seen you.
I would say just a shift in my mentality, just a shift in like the me that was fighting Tracy Love the first time, I was much more worried about trying to make it a clean fight, trying to win a decision, and trying to just like kind of play the game a little bit. But the fighter I am now, I I will not accept a decision win. It's just pretty much that simple.
What was that shift in mentality, specifically saying, like, I want to finish fights now? Because there is that drastic difference between all the decision wins you had back in the day versus now a lot of first round finishes.
Yeah, so basically just I went on I lost about 3 fights in a row or 3 or 4 fights in a row in 2023. And all of those were super, super close decision fights. And every single time I walked away going, man, I swore I won that fight. Like every single, it was the same story every time. Man, I swore I won that fight. Man, I swore I won that fight, just over and over and over again. Um, and then I was just like, wait a minute. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why I'm even why would I even try to win a decision? I don't think if there's any question about if I won or lost or not, then that should just show me that like I'm not really trying to be a dominant champion. I'm just out here trying to, make it by the skin of my teeth. And that really changed up my mentality.
When did you trust yourself and trust your abilities to the extent that you do now? Because I feel like when we talked a year plus ago, you were confident, but you weren't who you are now, and rightfully so,
Yeah.
Nasir. When did you start to trust your own abilities and say, I know that I can get to these next levels?
I would definitely say after the Michael Eastwood fight, that's when
Yeah.
so after the interview. So you're definitely right about that. So I would say after the Michael Eastwood interview, that's that's probably when I hit the biggest boost of confidence that I had.
In your eyes, what makes a great fighter? You're surrounded by them at Syndicate. You yourself are a great fighter. What makes a fighter separate themselves from the pack?
1,000%. So everybody has to have something that they're better at than others. Like you can't be like, oh, I'm as good as everything else as everybody. I'm as good at everything as everybody else is. It's like how do you guarantee a win? How do you guarantee an advantage? So um first off, I would say you have to have a mind that, won't break. You know what I mean? Whether it's inside the cage or outside the cage. If you're feeling sad, if you're if something's not going right in your life, you can't just show up to the gym just because you don't feel like it. You have to have a mind that's going to push through that you have to have a mind that's going to push you through all of the downs, all of the rough points, um, so that to make sure that no matter what, you're constantly trying to improve and you're constantly trying to get better. And then obviously second to that, I would say you have to have skills. You can't go in the gym and then just try to just so many people back in the day have gotten away with just being tough and then just learning the bare minimum skills. And then maybe they're a talented fighter. But nowadays you have to be as skilled as possible. You can't skip over any steps. You can't just go, oh, I'll just kind of half-ass that or half-ass this. Every time you're in the gym, you should be focused on making sure every single rep you do is the best rep it can be. Every single sparring session, you're dialed in and you're working on things you need to improve on. And then the third thing I would say is just a willingness to improve and a willingness to learn from your losses. Um, there's obviously maybe like even John Jones technically has a loss, but there's very few people in mixed martial arts that end their career without losses. But that doesn't mean they're not great fighters. You know what I mean? The greatest fighters, Anderson Silva, think about like, even GSP, like all those guys are lost before, and all those guys have learned from them. So I would say you have to have a willingness to learn. Also, just not just like a willingness to learn from your coaches, but a willingness to learn from your opponent, a willingness to learn from people you beat, a willingness to learn from a dude who's been doing it for less time than you. You just have to be willing to soak up all the information around you.
You brought up something, and I don't want to pose this on you in any sort of bad way, but I am curious with someone like you, who I think has the highest ceiling of anyone I've ever had the opportunity to broadcast for in you, Nasir.
That means the world to me.
Of course, man. I truly mean it. Um, when talking about losses and things like that, at some point, likely, just statistically, they will come. Have you let your mind go to those places and say, what am I going to do when that happens, or if that happens, or, maybe it's on the biggest stage, maybe it's on a regional show and I got to build myself back up? Have you let your mind kind of go to those places over the years?
So that's actually a great, interesting question. But I haven't had to do that because that's already happened. In 2023, when I had those losing streaks, every single time I was on the edge of quitting and just not fighting anymore. So I already know what that's like. I would always imagine like, oh man, what if I went pro and then I lost this or that? But that's not even something that I question anymore. I have to question because in my mind, there's no way that any loss is ever going to deter me. if my next fight, if I go out there and I get flatlined, it won't change me. It'll only make me better. There's no way that I'm ever gonna get deterred by a loss. You know what I mean? I thank God every day that I have a body and a mind and a brain that's able to do what I do every single day. So I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use what God's given me every single day. So a loss will never deter me. It doesn't matter how many losses or when it is. Obviously, I'm not going to be at the point where maybe somebody like Tony Ferguson is, where they're fighting way longer than they should be, and taking damage that they shouldn't be. But when it comes to the mental side of it, I will never have to question if I could make it through a loss because I've already done that before in my career.
I want to talk about this matchup, Hava Nathan Owens. When Zach Partridge gave me the call that this was the matchup, I said, "Oh my goodness, we've got a good one on our hands." Have you been able to watch Hava? And what do you make of him as a fighter? Because he is a special prospect in his own right and really built himself up.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely watched a little bit on him, not too much. I'm definitely at the point where I'm more focused on what I'm doing and less focused about what he's doing. But I've definitely seen a bit of him, and much respect to him. Nothing, he's a great competitor. I look forward to this matchup. Very, I'd say probably a little bit more of a striker. He has a little bit more. He has some Muay Thai technique. But yeah, man, I definitely think it's a great test for me. He has 8 professional fights when I only have one professional fight. So to me, that's a perfect test for me at this point. I would love to go out there and show that it doesn't matter if you're 4-4, if you're 4-0, if you're 8-0, if you're 16-0, if you're 20-0, if you're 27-0. If you fight me, you're gonna lose. You know what I mean? So this is just the perfect like launching pad to that and showing that it doesn't matter how many fights I have. I'm at the highest level. Um, but in my opinion, I'm not really too focused on him. I'm just focused on myself. I think I can win the fight anywhere it goes. I think that, I could sit here and break down what he does and what I do, but everybody watching this should expect it's going to be violent. There is no possible way this fight is just going to be a point fighting contest between us in a boring match. Everybody who's going to pay tickets, to pay money to go there or pay money to buy the pay-per-view, you guys know that as soon as the bell rings, I'm going to be looking to take his head off and he'll be doing the same to me. So I guarantee you, it will be a very exciting fight.
And it can't get here soon enough. August 16th, live from the Maverick Center in Salt Lake City. Nasir Davis is back. Havon Nathan Owens is back as well. I've said it once. I'll say it again. Nasir Davis is unbelievable. Can't wait to see him, my man. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Blake.